Hello, friends. This is the Storysculpt channel. Today, we will study the story of a lady named The Lady and the Dog by Anton Chekhov. Anton Pavlovich Chekhov was a Russian playwright and short story writer who is considered to be one of the greatest writers of all time. Let us start. This is part 1 of the 4th. People were telling one another that a newcomer had been seen on the promenade, a lady with a dog. Dmitri Gurov had been a fortnight in Yalta, and was accustomed to its ways, and he, too, had begun to take an interest in fresh arrivals. From his seat in Vernit's outdoor cafe, he caught sight of a young woman in a toque, passing along the promenade. She was fair and not very tall. After her trotted a white Pomeranian. Later he encountered her in the municipal park, and in the square, several times a day. She was always alone, wearing the same toque, and the Pomeranian always trotted at her side. Nobody knew who she was, and people referred to her simply as the lady with the dog. If she's here without her husband, and without any friends, thought Gurov, it wouldn't be a bad idea to make her acquaintance. He was not yet 40, but had a 12-year-old daughter and 2 schoolboy sons. He had been talked into marrying in his second year at college, and his wife now looked nearly twice as old as he was. She was a tall, black-browed woman, erect, dignified, imposing, and, as she said of herself, a thinker. She was a great reader, omitted the hard sign at the end of words in her letters, and called her husband Dmitri instead of Dmitri, and though he secretly considered her shallow, narrow-minded, and dowdy, he stood in awe of her, and disliked being at home. It was long since he had first begun deceiving her, and he was now constantly unfaithful to her, and this was no doubt why he spoke slightingly of women, to whom he referred as the lower race. He considered that the ample lessons he had received from bitter experience entitled him to call them whatever he liked, but without this lower race he could not have existed a single day. He was bored and ill at ease in the company of men, with whom he was always cold and reserved, but felt quite at home among women, and knew exactly what to say to them, and how to behave. He could even be silent in their company without feeling the slightest awkwardness. There was an elusive charm in his appearance and disposition which attracted women and caught their sympathies. He knew this and was himself attracted to them by some invisible force. Repeated and bitter experience had taught him that every fresh intimacy, while at first introducing such pleasant variety into everyday life, and offering itself as a charming, light adventure, inevitably developed, among decent people, especially in Moscow, where they are so irresolute and slow to move, into a problem of excessive complication leading to an intolerably irksome situation. But every time he encountered an attractive woman he forgot all about this experience, the desire for life surged up in him, and everything suddenly seemed simple and amusing. One evening, then, while he was dining at the restaurant in the park, the lady in the toque came strolling up and took a seat at a neighboring table. Her expression, gait, dress, coiffure, all told him that she was from the upper classes, that she was married, that she was in Yalta for the first time, alone and bored. The accounts of the laxity of morals among visitors to Yalta are greatly exaggerated, and he paid no heed to them, knowing that for the most part they were invented by people who would gladly have transgressed themselves, had they known how to set about it. But when the lady sat down at a neighboring table a few yards away from him, these stories of easy conquests, of excursions to the mountains, came back to him, and the seductive idea of a brisk transitory liaison, an affair with a woman whose very name he did not know, suddenly took possession of his mind. He snapped his fingers at the Pomeranian, and when it trotted up to him, shook his forefinger at it. The Pomeranian growled. Gurov shook his finger again. The lady glanced at him and instantly lowered her eyes. "He doesn't bite," she said, and blushed. "May I give him a bone?" he asked, and on her nod of consent added in friendly tones, "Have you been long in Yalta?" "About 5 days. And I am dragging out my second week here." Neither spoke for a few minutes. "The days pass quickly, and yet one is so bored here," she said, not looking at him. It's the thing to say it's boring here. People never complain of boredom in godforsaken holes like Believ or Gizdra, but when they get here it's, oh, the dullness. Oh, the dust. You'd think they'd come from Grenada to say the least of it. She laughed. Then they both went on eating in silence, like complete strangers. But after dinner they left the restaurant together, and embarked upon the light, jesting talk of people free and contented, for whom it is all the same where they go, or what they talk about. They strolled along, remarking on the strange light over the sea. The water was a warm, tender purple, the moonlight lay on its surface in a golden strip. They said how close it was, after the hot day. Gurov told her he was from Moscow, that he was really a philologist, but worked in a bank, that he had at one time trained himself to sing in a private opera company, but had given up the idea, that he owned 2 houses in Moscow, and from her he learned that she had grown up in Petersburg, but had got married in the town of S, where she had been living 2 years, that she would stay another month in Yalta, and that perhaps her husband, who also needed a rest, would join her. She was quite unable to explain whether her husband was a member of the gubernia council, or on the board of the Zemstvo, and was greatly amused at herself for this. Further, Gurov learned that her name was Anna Sergeyevna. Back in his own room he thought about her, and felt sure he would meet her the next day. It was inevitable. As he went to bed he reminded himself that only a very short time ago she had been a schoolgirl, like his own daughter, learning her lessons. He remembered how much there was of shyness and constraint in her laughter, in her way of conversing with a stranger. It was probably the first time in her life that she found herself alone, and in a situation in which men could follow her and watch her, and speak to her, all the time with a secret aim she could not fail to divine. He recalled her slender, delicate neck, her fine grey eyes. And yet there's something pathetic about her, he thought to himself as he fell asleep. Hope you are enjoying. Now, this is part 2. A week had passed since the beginning of their acquaintance. It was a holiday. Indoors it was stuffy, but the dust rose in clouds out of doors, and people's hats blew off. It was a thirsty day and Gurov kept going to the outdoor cafe for fruit drinks and ices to offer Anna Sergeyevna. The heat was overpowering. In the evening, when the wind had dropped, they walked to the pier to see the steamer in. There were a great many people strolling about the landing place, some, bunches of flowers in their hands, were meeting friends. 2 peculiarities of the smart Yalta crowd stood out distinctly. The elderly ladies all tried to dress very young, and there seemed to be an inordinate number of generals about. Owing to the roughness of the sea, the steamer arrived late, after the sun had gone down, and it had to maneuver for some time before it could get alongside the pier. Anna Sergeyevna scanned the steamer and passengers through her lorgnette, as if looking for someone she knew, and when she turned to Gurov her eyes were glistening. She talked a great deal, firing off abrupt questions and forgetting immediately what it was she had wanted to know. Then she lost her lorgnette in the crush. The smart crowd began dispersing, features could no longer be made out, the wind had quite dropped, and Gurov and Anna Sergeyevna stood there as if waiting for someone else to come off the steamer. Anna Sergeyevna had fallen silent, every now and then smelling her flowers, but not looking at Gurov. "It's turning out a fine evening," he said. "What shall we do?" "We might go for a drive." She made no reply. He looked steadily at her and suddenly took her in his arms and kissed her lips, and the fragrance and dampness of the flowers closed round him, but the next moment he looked behind him in alarm. Had anyone seen them? "Let's go to your room," he murmured. And they walked off together, very quickly. Her room was stuffy and smelt of some scent she had bought in the Japanese shop. Gurov looked at her, thinking to himself, how full of strange encounters life is. He could remember carefree, good-natured women who were exhilarated by lovemaking and grateful to him for the happiness he gave them, however short-lived, and there had been others, his wife among them, whose caresses were insincere, affected, hysterical, mixed up with a great deal of quite unnecessary talk, and whose expressions seemed to say that all this was not just lovemaking or passion, but something much more significant. Then there had been 2 or 3 beautiful, cold women, over whose features flitted a predatory expression, betraying a determination to wring from life more than it could give, women no longer in their first youth, capricious, irrational, despotic, brainless, and when Gurov had called to these, their beauty aroused in him nothing but repulsion, and the lace trimming on their underclothes reminded him of fish scales. But here the timidity and awkwardness of youth and inexperience were still apparent, and there was a feeling of embarrassment in the atmosphere, as if someone had just knocked at the door. Anna Sergeyevna, the lady with the dog, seemed to regard the affair as something very special, very serious, as if she had become a fallen woman, an attitude he found odd and disconcerting. Her features lengthened and drooped, and her long hair hung mournfully on either side of her face. She assumed a pose of dismal meditation, like a repentant sinner in some classical painting. "It isn't right," she said. "You will never respect me any more." On the table was a watermelon. Gurov cut himself a slice from it and began slowly eating it. At least half an hour passed in silence. Anna Sergeyevna was very touching, revealing the purity of a decent, naive woman who had seen very little of life. The solitary candle burning on the table scarcely lit up her face, but it was obvious that her heart was heavy. "Why should I stop respecting you?" asked Gurov. "You don't know what you're saying." "May God forgive me," she exclaimed, and her eyes filled with tears. "It's terrible. No need to seek to justify yourself." "How can I justify myself? I'm a wicked, fallen woman. I despise myself and have not the least thought of self-justification. It isn't my husband I have deceived, it's myself. And not only now, I have been deceiving myself for ever so long. My husband is no doubt an honest, worthy man, but he's a flunky. I don't know what it is he does at his office, but I know he's a flunky. I was only 20 when I married him, and I was devoured by curiosity. I wanted something higher. I told myself that there must be a different kind of life. I wanted to live, to live. I was burning with curiosity. You'll never understand that, but I swear to God I could no longer control myself. Nothing could hold me back. I told my husband I was ill, and I came here. And I started going about like one possessed, like a madwoman, and now I have become an ordinary, worthless woman, and everyone has the right to despise me." Gurov listened to her, bored to death. The naive accents, the remorse, all was so unexpected, so out of place. But for the tears in her eyes, she might have been jesting or play-acting. "I don't understand," he said gently. "What is it you want?" She hid her face against his breast and pressed closer to him. "Do believe me, I implore you to believe me," she said. "I love all that is honest and pure in life. Vice is revolting to me. I don't know what I'm doing. The common people say they are snared by the devil. And now I can say that I have been snared by the devil, too." "Come, come," he murmured. He gazed into her fixed, terrified eyes, kissed her, and soothed her with gentle affectionate words, and gradually she calmed down and regained her cheerfulness. Soon they were laughing together again. When, a little later, they went out, there was not a soul on the promenade. The town and its cypresses looked dead, but the sea was still roaring as it dashed against the beach. A solitary fishing boat tossed on the waves, its lamp blinking sleepily. They found a droshky and drove to Oanda. "I discovered your name in the hall, just now," said Gurov, written up on the board. "Von Diederitz. Is your husband a German?" "No. His grandfather was, I think, but he belongs to the Orthodox Church himself." When they got out of the droshky at Oanda they sat down on a bench not far from the church, and looked down at the sea, without talking. Yalta could be dimly discerned through the morning mist, and white clouds rested motionless on the summits of the mountains. Not a leaf stirred, the grasshoppers chirruped, and the monotonous hollow roar of the sea came up to them, speaking of peace, of the eternal sleep lying in wait for us all. The sea had roared like this long before there was any Yalta or Oanda. It was roaring now, and it would go on roaring, just as indifferently and hollowly, when we had passed away. And it may be that in this continuity, this utter indifference to life and death, lies the secret of our ultimate salvation, of the stream of life on our planet, and of its never-ceasing movement towards perfection. Side by side with a young woman, who looked so exquisite in the early light, soothed and enchanted by the sight of all this magical beauty, sea, mountains, clouds, and the vast expanse of the sky, Gurov told himself that, when you came to think of it, everything in the world is beautiful really, everything but our own thoughts and actions, when we lose sight of the higher aims of life, and of our dignity as human beings. Someone approached them, a watchman, probably, looked at them and went away. And there was something mysterious and beautiful even in this. The steamer from Feodosia could be seen coming towards the pier, lit up by the dawn, its lamps out. "There's dew on the grass," said Anna Sergeyevna, breaking the silence. "Yes. Time to go home." They went back to the town. After this they met every day at noon on the promenade, lunching and dining together, going for walks, and admiring the sea. She complained of sleeplessness, of palpitations, asked the same questions over and over again, alternately surrendering to jealousy and the fear that he did not really respect her. And often, when there was nobody in sight in the square or the park, he would draw her to him and kiss her passionately. The utter idleness, these kisses in broad daylight, accompanied by furtive glances and the fear of discovery, the heat, the smell of the sea, and the idle, smart, well-fed people continually crossing their field of vision, seemed to have given him a new lease on life. He told Anna Sergeyevna she was beautiful and seductive, made love to her with impetuous passion, and never left her side, while she was always pensive, always trying to force from him the admission that he did not respect her, that he did not love her a bit, and considered her just an ordinary woman. Almost every night they drove out of town, to Oanda, the waterfall, or some other beauty spot. And these excursions were invariably a success, each contributing fresh impressions of majestic beauty. All this time they kept expecting her husband to arrive. But a letter came in which he told his wife that he was having trouble with his eyes, and implored her to come home as soon as possible. Anna Sergeyevna made hasty preparations for leaving. "It's a good thing I'm going," she said to Gurov. "It's the intervention of fate." She left Yalta in a carriage, and he went with her as far as the railway station. The drive took nearly a whole day. When she got into the express train, after the second bell had been rung, she said, "Let me have one more look at you. One last look." "That's right." She did not weep, but was mournful, and seemed ill, the muscles of her cheeks twitching. "I shall think of you, I shall think of you all the time," she said. "God bless you. Think kindly of me. We are parting forever, it must be so, because we ought never to have met. Goodbye, God bless you." The train steamed rapidly out of the station, its lights soon disappearing, and a minute later even the sound it made was silenced, as if everything were conspiring to bring this sweet oblivion, this madness, to an end as quickly as possible. And Gurov, standing alone on the platform and gazing into the dark distance, listened to the shrilling of the grasshoppers and the humming of the telegraph wires, with a feeling that he had only just waked up. And he told himself that this had been just one more of the many adventures in his life, and that it, too, was over, leaving nothing but a memory. He was moved and sad, and felt a slight remorse. After all, this young woman whom he would never again see had not been really happy with him. He had been friendly and affectionate with her, but in his whole behavior, in the tones of his voice, in his very caresses, there had been a shade of irony, the insulting indulgence of the fortunate male, who was, moreover, almost twice her age. She had insisted in calling him good, remarkable, high-minded. Evidently he had appeared to her different from his real self. In a word, he had involuntarily deceived her. There was an autumnal feeling in the air, and the evening was chilly. It's time for me to be going north, too, thought Gurov as he walked away from the platform. High time. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel.